How do you define beginner, intermediate, and advanced? A beginner has it's nothing to do with time because there's a lot of guys in the gym that have been in the gym for a very long period of time and they quite I'm not being cruel, quite frankly, they don't have any idea what they're doing to the point where they can be effective. They can get a lot out of their training. Not a criticism, it's just a reality. A beginner is still trying to figure out, nutrition. They might be immature, so to speak, on nutrition, not planning their meals, not really watching, not having a structured bulk. They're not really getting anything out of their training, whether their training is um, focused or unfocused, right? So a beginner will also have sloppier form, more unfocused form. What I mean by that is they might not understand the posterior lips, or they might not be getting a lot out of the posterior lips, or there might be just chasing reps and just being really sloppy on the exercises like leg extensions or lat pull downs. Their form really isn't uh, efficient enough to get much out of their training. Now, reasonable form is going to give you good results from your training, solid results from your training. But a beginner is still working on form. Beginners still working on their diet. They're still working on form. They're still working on building a base of strength. They're still trying to unlock all the pieces combined so they can start to gain muscle and strength in a consistent manner. And you can jump from a beginner to an intermediate rather quickly. A beginner still needs time. I mean, if they went into the gym and they are nailing their form and they are nailing their diet and they're nailing everything out of the gate, they still need time to get over that, shaky stage, that introductory neurological chaos that happens. And they still need to establish a track record, that they are consistently building strength and building muscle. So I hate to set a amount of time that someone's a beginner, but generally I'd say the quickest you could probably go from a beginner to a late beginner, early intermediate is maybe about 6 months. If you really get in and really nailing beginner gains in your first 6 months and you're hitting progressive overload and your form is good, you're going to make pretty solid progress. So you can start to enter that late beginner, early intermediate stage. An intermediate lifter enters what we call the grind zone, where they start to worry that they're doing something wrong. Everything was moving really rapidly as a beginner. And then as an intermediate, hey, I think I've hit a plateau. My bench is, I'm only adding 1 rep every 6 weeks, every 4 weeks. These are the intermediate questions. Even if it's early intermediate, they start to pick up a fear that they're doing something wrong when they're not doing anything wrong at all. The process just naturally slows. The closer you fly to the sun, the hotter it gets. And lifting, what that means is the more muscle and strength you build, the slower the next step is going to be. That's a reality. All these videos about, hey, I've plateaued and here's a way to expedite the plateau or here's a way to combat the plateau are quite frankly nonsense because they lack an understanding of the process. Unless you're a genetic freak, you can do a specialization program and squeeze a little bit of juice out of that orange, right? But in the long run, no plateau busting program is going to dramatically impact that rate. It's going to be a long grind at the intermediate stage. So the intermediate stage is the grind stage. It's a long period of stay. The longest stage. Um, where you're going from, hey, I've overcome beginner gains and I have a good grasp of form and I'm nailing my bulks and nailing my calories and I've established a history of building strength and building muscle. And then you enter the early intermediate stage and you could be using 50-pound dumbbell benches, 50-pound dumbbells on dumbbell bench. And then you're working up to getting the hundreds. It can be a long stretch of time, a long grind, and it can, that's the meat and potatoes of what we do as lifters. The intermediate zone is really where, trying to reach the intermediate zone is really where lifters go to die. They try to do everything other than progressive overload. I'm going to add volume. I'm going to focus on feel. I'm afraid my joints are going to get beat up, so I'm going to do this, that, or the other thing. Excuse my language, but it's what we call fuck around-itis. You start to see people develop fuck around-itis as the weight gets heavier. And, inconsistent diet is very unforgiving. Lack of focus on progressive overload is very unforgiving. And it prevents people from entering that intermediate stage. The intermediate stage is really where the majority of muscle is built. If you're focused in the beginner stage, you're going to build some muscle. You're going to nail your form. You're going to build, 6 to 8 pounds of muscle, whatever it is, right? But then you're going to enter the intermediate stage, and that's when the majority of your strength and muscle is built. And it's also where, like I said, most people just go to die. They give up, quit, overthink things. Things become more slow. They try to, I'm going to add volume. I'm going to switch to Mike Mentzer. I'm going to switch programs. I'm going to jump programs. This is really where patience becomes key. You need to get in there and you need to grind for 3 to 5 years. Grind, 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 grind. An advanced lifter, people always come to me and say, how do I know I'm an advanced lifter? If you're not sure, you're probably not an advanced lifter, and that's not an insult. An advanced lifter has spent a long period of time in the intermediate zone, and they are pretty close to their potential, like capping out 80 to 90% of all the muscle and strength they'll ever have. You walk into a gym and you see an advanced lifter. They're moving around a ton of weight. They look focused. They look at a next level. You can just tell something is going on. It's the type of guy you want to watch, guy or girl, whatever you want to watch, because they've been doing it for a long period of time. They've established consistency. They know what works for them. A lot of the stuff that works for them, if they brought it on social media, might even take heat. I like to do this. I like to do that. I like to do this superset. I like to rest, pause this. And some knucklehead will come on, respond in the comments. That's not optimal, or that's not the way you should do things, or science says, right? And an advanced lifter, excuse my crude language, is basically pissing on the fire that is optimization. They know what works for them. And what works for them is the accumulation of a long, long period of time of training and adaptation and training evolution. They go in the gym. They don't like T-bar rows, but they like dumbbell rows. They don't like squats. They like safety bar squats. They don't like squats in the 6-rep range, but they like this specific reverse pyramid program or approach. So the advanced lifter is going to have basically a program that makes no sense to you. It doesn't have that structure or that optimization that we would typically expect, that like people on social media get drunk on. You have to have 4 to 6 reps, or you have to have 2 sets per exercise, or it has to be this volume per week, right? The program of an advanced lifter is probably not going to make any sense to anyone. And if you put it in a room of optimization gurus, it basically causes them to have a heart attack, because it is based on experience. It is based on preference. It is based on what is taking place in the gym. And a lot of that could be related to injury history. Someone just might find that the T-bar rotates their lower back better. Everybody, you have longer limbs or shorter limbs. You might hate pull-ups because of long arms. You might love the V-bar, lat pull down and the pull over. All of this really, really comes down to a lot of years of experience. And an advanced lifter is going to have the majority of their mass and strength. They don't need to ask somebody how to program. They know what they like. They know how to get it done. And they are, if you ask them, they know what it takes. Now, there are some advanced lifters out there that start to get drunk on the smell of their own poop. All right. Sorry to be crude, but it's true. You will get some advanced lifters that will develop a system of training over 10 years, and they will start to think that my system is best for everyone. This is a huge red flag. And I want you guys to always remember it. You can have an advanced lifter that will develop a system based on preferences over the years, and then he'll dump it on your lap and say, this is the way, this is the path. And it's not. That's the path for him, and it works perfectly fine for him. But you are going to be on a different path, and that is the brilliance of the freedom of lifting. As long as we have reasonable volume and reasonable exercise selection and all of these things, we're in the reasonable realm of what has worked in the last 70 years. You have the freedom to evolve your training based on needs. You can laterally swap T-bar rows for Pendley rows or dumbbell rows, right? You can laterally swap dumbbell curls for, easy bar curls for whatever. You can do these things, right? That's the beautiful thing about training. It is freedom rather than the restriction that these pseudo influencers and optimizers don't understand or don't tell you or don't teach you. So an advanced lifter is going to have confidence in their system, and they are going to have a lot of strength and muscle. You can basically see them when you spot them in the gym. Now, I'm just going to put a final end note on this discussion because it is something you will see. And you see a lot in the lifting world. You will see advanced lifters beat themselves up, punish themselves, build a lot of mass over a long period of time. And then they wake up and they start to train completely different. They set aside what they've been doing and they start to train completely different. I'm not going to name names here, but you can see these guys on social media. They train completely different from how they built their base. Here is why. Once you have built a substantial amount of muscle and strength, it is super easy to maintain that muscle and strength as long as you're basically doing anything. So when you see these hyper advanced lifters, these gods on social media, and they switch to something that's completely different from how they built their base, and they'll start to tout this as their method. And it can be confusing to a lot of lifters. You have to look at how they built their base because it's how you're training, it's how I'm training. And I want you guys to always remember, once you get to that stage where you're advanced, you can do pretty much anything. Reduce volume dramatically, reduce exercise selection dramatically. And it's very, very hard to lose muscle mass.